Queens. I am here with Chelsey Lehl, who is a crystal guardian and the founder of Yoni Crystals. And I came across Yoni Crystals, which we'll get into a little bit later, on my journey over the last year. And I was immediately connected to Chelsey's business, Yoni Crystals, and I completely fell in love, and I was like, okay, I need to get involved with these women, these amazing women. So thank you so much for coming on.
Mm-hmm. So grateful to be here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so where are you right now in your life, physically and mentally?
Physically and mentally. I love this check-in question. I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for you inviting me here. As you know, I've been very much behind the scenes with my business, so it feels, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to be like, hi, I'm on camera.
Yeah.
My voice for it. So feeling a lot of gratitude in my body, and my cat is here to join me. She might make an appearance at some point.
Yes, perfect.
But yeah, in my body, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm back visiting my family in Colorado and just spending a lot of time in nature. That's my reset place. So yeah.
Perfect. So what is Yoni Crystals? What is a Yoni Crystal, and then what is your company, Yoni Crystals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I get asked this so often, and what I find really interesting is my answer to that question can depend a lot on who's actually in front of me. I find when doing this, the work with the womb and, sensual, sexual healing work, a lot of it is dependent on, I find dependent on my airplane.
You can hear it? Shit.
Oh, it's okay though.
Goddamn airplanes. Yeah, just and you went out. So hopefully there's not gonna be too many flying.
No worries. Okay. See my cat and the airplanes were good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, Yoni crystals, they're healing gems and minerals. Mm-hmm. They are, in my opinion, they're just gifts from the earth. They're literally little pieces of consciousness. And, it's interesting because depending on, like I said, depending on who I'm sharing with, sometimes it's like, they're just healing crystals, and I just leave it at that. But, to go into the deeper portions of this, and where I find the real magic to be with working with the stones is in going into that more, I like to use the word magical, that more magical place of activating. It's like if you're doing yoga or, you're doing some type of a personal practice, you can just go through the motions and just do the movements, or you can really slow down and tap in, like, wait a minute, what else is here? What else is informing me in my body? So I really invite the women, when they're working with the crystals, either internally or externally, to, really slow down and ask, what is really the message and what is the gift that's coming, not only from my body, but from this crystal and this, literally this little being, this little consciousness, like a plant, or, my cats are having a little romp around back there. Oh my God. Okay. Hey, sorry. I thought one was in here, but they're both in here. They're getting a little rowdy. So Yoni Crystals is, it's really, it's my baby. It's my project. It started as a hobby about nearly 5 years ago, and slowly progressed into being what it is today, which is, this incredible offering to, not only women, but men too. I get a lot of, it's interesting, in this last year, my business has been expanding into including more men, and that's been a really interesting journey. Yeah, so does that explain? I mean, I could go in deeper, but
we're gonna go in deep. Well, I actually have one of your Yoni eggs here in these beautiful little pouches. But this is what a Yoni egg is for anybody out there who doesn't know. And I just wanted, what is a Yoni egg, and where did it come about? What's the history behind this little guy?
Sure. Yeah, so the Yoni egg practice originated anywhere between 2 to 5,000 years ago in ancient China, and it was revered as this practice that it was basically reserved only for royalty. And what I think is really interesting about this is, like, it was said that, you know, the women in the court, or in the you know, they were basically doing these practices like for the emperor.
Right.
And, you know, when I read that the first time and I've heard this story, you know, I'm kind of like, okay, that's great. And now, like today, what does it look like for us to have this tool and this gift, you know, this little egg that's meant to be, you know, used for our wellness and, you know, our whole body? How can we really claim that and make that like about our, you know, our process and our bodies and our journey?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the history of the Jade Egg, yeah, I have some thoughts on that, because I mean, it's and it's a blessing, you know. I really, yeah, I think that could be said for a lot of modalities that come from ancient times. It's like, you know, how can we take this thing from so long ago and really apply it to ourselves today in today's world?
Right. A plane's coming over, sorry. Oh my God. Gotta get out of this place. Shoot.
That's a good idea. You could just mute me for a second. But.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll just do that. I'll mute and you'll just keep talking. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's what is so cool about the Yoni crystal, is that I feel like women are shifting and waking up, because we're starting to reclaim our space, which for so long was, you know, we just get messages that, cultural messages, that it's kind of dirty, it's taboo, we should be disconnected from it because it's something to be controlled and managed, but not really embodied. And so that's why I love like working with my Yoni egg, and which totally like blew open my whole being into like a whole nother level of being. So why did you start reading about Yoni eggs, and what brought you to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first off, I just want to appreciate you for like saying that, just, you know, really owning like, wow, this has been my journey. And, you know, one of the things I say is it takes a really high level of self-love to embark on the womb journey, you know, to really like say yes to that path. A lot of women that I work with, and myself included, you know, we start with, oh, I think I want to eat healthy, or hey, maybe I want to like get into my body more and work out or go to yoga. And there's this slow process of like almost like an unpacking that comes through. And eventually at some point, you know, the womb space is just such a pivotal point in like how we show up in the world, and, you know, who we are, and the energy. I mean, just literally energy that comes from the womb space. It's the place that creates babies. So, you know, for me personally, I found this practice in an interesting way. I came out of a pretty toxic relationship, and, you know, thought he was the one and was planning my whole life. And when that came crumbling down, I realized I really need to come back to me. Like, I need to find my center. I need to find my source. And around that same time, I moved in with my then crystal teacher. So my background, I started studying crystal healing, and living with this woman was just such a game changer for me. You know, I told her that I wanted to do this thing. I was like, you know, I'm really interested in Yoni crystals, but, you know, it took a while to really like step into that and say like, you know, okay, this is, I'm actually going to be this lady that sells crystals for vaginas.
Right.
You know, it was a really slow unfolding. I had to be really patient with myself. And what I found though, through the course of, you know, just really saying yes to my healing journey, and like, you know, embarking upon like, you know, what does it look like for me to make time and space to really like slow down and do this deeper work. It just became really obvious that like, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And yeah, it was like, okay, this is it.
Totally. I felt the same way when I was buying some eggs wholesale for you. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be selling like some pussy rocks online. And I just like, my dad kept flashing into my like peripheral. I was like, get out of here, Dad. Like, I'll explain them to you later, you know? But yeah, totally it is. It's funny because there is like this very taboo, forbidden feeling around this work and around tapping into your source. And I think that comes from thousands of years of living in a hypermasculine paradigm, like whatever computer chip that we're currently running, right? But that's what's so funny. And I wanted to actually talk about why this work, and I'm sure you felt it, you get a lot of resistance. And I know in my life, wherever I found resistance, like in myself, like, oh, I don't know if I should work with Yoni eggs because, you know, there's lots of medical professionals that say they're bogus and like crystals are bogus. But then I was like, you know what? That resistance is where I need to go because it's going to tell me something, right? There's something that's blocked. So what would you like, how do you, when you come across medical professionals and all these articles basically saying any kind of like feminine healing or like energetics is just kind of bullshit. So what's your response to that?
It's in the woo-woo category, huh?
Exactly, yeah. Everyone says, oh, it's woo-woo, but it's like, there's something to the woo-woo because it's back here in that great mystery kind of portal. Yeah. Why are we so resistant to it?
Yeah, well, I love everything you just shared. First, I want to touch on like speaking to the taboo and how, you know, in societal norms, this is absolutely something that is, yeah, people like stay away from it, you know. One thing that I share in the women's circles that I hold when I find that some women are, you know, a little uncomfortable or, you know, it's taking a minute to open up, I say, you know, when we look at the womb space and we look at our pleasure, that's the source. That's the place where we reach, you know, our highest highs. Like we have our, you know, these epiphanies and these transcendental moments and like our orgasmic state. And that's amazing. But at the same time, that's also where we go into the depths. You know, as the higher we go, the deeper we go. So, you know, the womb space is also a place where we hold trauma and shame and confusion. And, you know, I think so many women on the planet right now, like we're all kind of waking up to what's really stored in our bodies, you know, on a really deep level, like beyond just this life, but thinking about, you know, our ancestors and, you know, just what we've gone through on the planet as a human race. It's a big key in my work around, you know, that's what I'm so excited to like do the work around and to like dive into and to heal, you know, to really rewrite the story of, you know, like really looking at these things that would otherwise be taboo or like topics to be like, wait a minute, like what's really there? And, you know, how can we really normalize, you know, saying yes to our health and our well-being? And yeah, so first I just wanted to touch on that because I just think it's a really big opportunity. I think it's just such a big space for not just women, but all of us on the planet to really like explore.
Yes, yeah.
And to just kind of open up a little bit too. So, and then, yeah, it's just interesting. So that leads into the whole, you know, the woo-woo conversation and how, I mean, there's definitely a lot of conversation around, you know, this practice in particular. And I've been watching, it's been this interesting process of witnessing what's been happening online, you know, with, you know, different opinions that people carry.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, you know, I come to this place where I'm like, you know, you really just have to follow your own truth. You've got to really tune in. And, you know, you can't listen to the skeptics. You can't listen to like, you know, the scientists or the people who are, you know, broadcasting this is the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, thank you. Like the moment I said, I'm not interested in the norm, that's when like my life like started. And I feel like I've really said yes to, you know, I've really said yes to making space for, you know, for spirit and for these other things that, you know, just can't be explained by the everyday.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
it's so true. I love what you just said because you know, I was talking to someone and they're like, you know, science is really, the word science means knowledge. And right now, like the way we understand our material world is through through the word of science, right? And like that's what actually binds mysticism down to like a level where most people can understand. But it came from, right, an explanation of like what's out there. So it's even when we get into like quantum physics and like, chemistry, and it's all just metaphor, right, that we're speaking now, but we've taken that as the word of logic, and which makes sense, right? Because it's like, but really when we get into crystals, like crystals are from the earth, and crystals have this knowledge. There's a science behind it, right?
Yeah.
But and we could go back into history where it's like when the church became like the thing, right? It suppressed a lot of like anything that was kind of too out there, and it split the body, and they took care of spirit, and then like the rest of the world took care of science, right? So I understand like
let's separate these two things that actually are one and the same.
And like, right, so, and it's so true. Now we're currently living like that. Like we live up in our heads and our bodies are down here. But that's what I love about Yoni crystal work, because for women it's like we have this built-in accessible portal to the universe. And like that's, and I wanted to talk about the Yoniverse in a little bit. But yeah, that's what's so fascinating about this work, is like I know that it's, I think you have to approach Yoni crystals, of course, with this sense of like deep respect and love, and like you said, it does take bravery to go there. And there's, women do hold a lot of issues in our tissues, so it's like going into that is not easy, and I know there's a lot of resistance, but once you start going into that world, it's like, yeah, you can't really turn back, because now you know this thing. Yeah. And I was recently at a course, and they were talking about Paul Levine's book, The Body Keeps the Score. And what's interesting is that like when I was an egg in my mother's ovary while she was in the womb of my grandma. So it's like all this, right? Which is mind blowing, right? It is like that little Russian doll, like little ones open up, and it's like all of that, that trauma is passed down cellularly, and it's like I can feel it when I do dishes. It like gets triggered. I can feel it when I do housework. It's like all this anger and all of this like whatever it is, grief is passed down through us. And so what's beautiful about this age that we're in is that all of a sudden we have this ability to, like you said, rewrite the narrative, rewrite the script, because I don't know why at this point in our lives we have that, but this life stream we're able to do that. So it's like a very powerful, powerful tool, yet it's so like, and that's why I think there's so much resistance to it.
Yeah. And we're really on the turning point of it.
Yes, absolutely. And so, like, what would you say for someone who's first trying to figure out Yoni eggs for the first time and actually start making that connection with their womb? And can you hold on for like 1 minute, because I need to charge it on my computer.
Absolutely.
Technology is kicking my ass today, and I'm just like, oh my god. Okay, hold on 1 second.
All good.
Brief interlude. All right, sweet. Okay, so first time Yoni egg buyer, like what would you tell them to, like, how do you start?
Beautiful. So I suggest that it's best to always start with an intention. To really, ask yourself, what is it that I'm calling into my life, or what is it that I'm wanting to release? Really starting from that center place of like, where am I at, and what is this like? What does this really mean to me? A lot of women will say, they'll ask me, how do I use it? What do I do with it? And there's just such a spectrum on how to answer that. It's, again, I look at yoga, like if someone was to say, how do you do yoga? There's you know, hundreds, if not thousands of different types and lineages and, you know, reasons that one would choose a certain practice. So for some women, you know, it's going to be, you know, more of a subtle practice and like, oh, I just really want to, you know, connect to my body and like maybe awaken my sensuality and just kind of explore. And for another woman, it may be, wow, I'm going through, you know, I'm realizing there's something here that, you know, feels like it could be trauma. I'm not really sure, but something's up and I need to dive into this. You know, and for some women, they think they're wanting, and then they discover, you know, pain. And for some women, they're like wanting to heal pain, and then they discover pleasure. And so, you know, it's really, you know, it's really just a journey. And I you know, I consider it to be a spiral. It's, you know, it is the great mystery. There's just, you know, there's so much there. And one thing that I find really, really fascinating when a woman starts this journey and this practice is she may begin with, you know, this is my intention, but upon using the egg and upon, you know, connecting to her body, there's going to be this, unfolding, there's going to be this guidance that actually comes from the crystal, you know, from just stepping into the practice. So, you know, I usually suggest, you know, giving yourself anywhere from 20 to, you know, 60, if not 75 minutes, depending on, you know, how much you really want to like dedicate time to yourself, and just make that a really special container. You know, really give yourself the time and the space to say, okay, I'm gonna, you know, create a private space. I'm gonna put the phone on airplane. I'm gonna put on some nice music. I'm gonna light some incense, and I'm really gonna like make this a ritual for myself. Yeah. And, you know, like I'm all about go all out. Like get yourself a bath. Like, you know, buy yourself some flowers, and you know, really just creating the space to just like slow down and tune in and be like, what does my body need? What does my body want? And yeah, I think that's just the best place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even the act, even if you didn't have a Yoni crystal or Yoni egg, and just carving out time to slow down, and which the feminine energy is so undervalued in our society, right? So it makes sense that like anytime a woman can spend an hour doing something for her, it's so rejuvenating and it's so powerful. And I remember like as I started to tap into this energy, I had this new, when I got into that open, receptive, flowing state where I would like buy myself flowers, make things beautiful, and it felt really uncomfortable at first. But then, yeah, when I started to do that, I was like, wow, like I can love on myself in a way that no one can, and no one will ever do that for me. And then all of a sudden I started getting this new energy. I was so much more restored than I would be just like chilling out and watching a movie. And it does take like this discipline and this effort to cultivate the feminine in our society today, which is just like, yeah, it's so crazy because so many of us have lost this art of feminine connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. And how to really just give yourself permission to go there. You know, one of the practices I experimented with in the beginning was like taking myself on a date. You know, I'd really like activate, you know, what is my masculine? Like how could my masculine internally show up for my feminine? You know, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, oh yeah, I really want to set the space. Like I really do want to make this, you know, a special thing for my body and for my exploration. And yeah, it's now that I'm in the practice and I'm supporting so many women in it, I'm like, okay, there's no way to ever go back. Like this is just, you know, it's really filling our cup.
Yes, filling up that cup. And I think we were talking about it the other day too, like you need that discipline or that structure, kind of like the cosmic father or sacred geometry, in order to find that beauty within there. So it's like, it's learning, once we start to like rise up that feminine energy, then like the masculine is like in this beautiful balance with it. And it's not like this, one's not bad and the other's not bad. It's just like, no, you can complete yourself without anybody or anything.
Yep.
Do it on your own. And that's what's so cool about, Yoni crystals. So it's like, okay, so you moved in with this woman and you started to really realize that you are a healer. You're supposed to bring like more light into this world. And then how did you get to now this massive wholesale and retail company online? Like what were your steps?
Totally. Yeah, it was such a spiral. It was such a journey. One of the biggest catalysts in really saying yes and like stepping into the mission and stepping into the work, I went to a workshop in Bali, and it was a sacred geometry workshop. I love sacred geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I got, yeah, we'll talk about that too. But once I got to the island, I just immediately felt at home. There was something about the culture and the way that people are on the island. Like everything is a ritual. There's just constant ceremonies. There's just a reverence that I had not yet experienced in my life until visiting. And paralleling that, this island seems to gravitate incredible powerhouse women who are, and men, but specifically women who seem to be like on their journey in like the sexual healing arts. Like there's like almost a concentration of that. So I landed in this a really supportive community where I realized like, oh, this actually makes sense. And from really like giving myself permission to say like, what would it look like for me to, live part-time overseas, and say yes to this new lifestyle. And it just clicked. I was like, okay, so it was definitely a lot of it wasn't easy. There was a lot of like back and forth flying. I still come back to the States. I go to the gem show every year, and I work specifically with certain mine owners, and I work with a, shipping center in the States. So there's a lot of logistics and a lot of things that come with it. It wasn't like, oh, I just moved to Bali and it was easy. It was like, it was a grind. There's definitely like a lot behind, strategizing and really figuring out how am I going to make this work. But also, again, with that parallel, I realized the more that I said yes to showing up as really being an advocate for women's wellness, and like standing up and saying, this has been my healing journey with the crystals, and this has been my healing journey with my womb. It brought me to this place of being like, okay, like actually, like this is bigger than me. This is beyond, Chelsey wanting to just have, my dream business. It was like, oh, there's actually something so much bigger at play here. And once I really got out of my own way and made space for that, the specific key players who were meant to be a part of the movement showed up. And I wake up every day and I'm just like, wow, this is this is amazing. Like I really truly love what I do. And there's I'm going to spiral out, but I'll bring it back. There's a lot of movement happening right now in the gem and mineral world. The crystals are really coming to the surface. I mean, it's taken over and it's amazing. And with that being said, there's a lot of unethical mining happening. There's a lot of the industry. I realized upon looking to begin to source the minerals, I was like, okay, there's just a lot of these, I just found there was a lot of lack of integrity in the gems that I was seeing that were available on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some of it was really intense, like, jade eggs that were literally dyed. Like they were a different mineral and they would be dyed and then sold. Or something else I talk about on my website is some of the crystals are actually covered with like a resin coating. And, a traditional mine operation, they're not used to these crystals being needed to be used internally. So, they put a protective coating on that's like some type of really, really toxic resin, which, if a crystal is just going to be sitting on a shelf or, be a display, I get that makes sense. But to be being used internally, this is like toxic, it's not safe. So I started realizing like, wait a minute, there is not an ethically sourced, like safe organic product. So that journey, that's really what got me taking this way more seriously. I was like, okay, I actually need to source these crystals in a really ethical way. And Luckily, because I I just connect to the angels and I'm like, okay, please guide me, you know, show me, you know, align me with the minerals and the mine owners who are actually willing to hear me as a business owner. Hey, these are my needs. These are my customers. Like, you know, this is the product that I'm offering. So, you know, it's of the utmost importance that, you know, when the crystals are shaped, you know, from the point of excavation all the way to the point, the lapidary process of them being shaped, you know, there's no explosive mining, there's no chemicals or additives being used to shape the crystal or dye the crystal. You know, it's done in, you know, it's done in a completely organic way using waters. And so I get to go on and on about this. I don't know how far into it we want to go, but you know, that was a huge component of recognizing that, you know, it's really important that you know, we need to honor not only the earth and how we bring these crystals forth, but, you know, it's mirroring how we honor ourselves and how we honor our bodies. You know, like, are we using, you know, bleached tampons, or, you know, are we using like fragrances and like, you know, different things? Like, what, you know, it really comes down to like our yoni health. And, you know, I'm just such a, yeah, I'm like, okay, we only need the natural stuff for our temple, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've been sold on like, okay, you know, to wash it with like specific like washes and, you know, just, yeah, the stuff I see out there, I'm just like, really? Like in the, yeah, and tampons are like, there's studies coming out that it's like a known inflammatory response as soon as you use one. So it's like, whoa, why are we doing all of these things? Because again, it's just supposed to be medically managed and forgotten about, and that's it, which is so disappointing.
It's part of an industry, you know, it's a bigger issue, and, you know, we're, you know, it's such a delicate ecosystem down there. It really is. And so, you know, I'm really grateful that, you know, I've managed to work with, you know, I literally only work with 3 mines and the mine owners directly. And it's been just such a beautiful journey, like being in the conversation with them and, you know, saying, hey, this is, you know, this is what we're bringing to the world. So, you know, let's really bring it in a way that's supportive and nourishing. And, you know, the women who work with these minerals, you know, yourself included, you can really feel the difference, you know. You know, you can definitely order, you know, yoni eggs from almost anywhere. You know, you can order them from all over the place. And you know, I think it's really just a gift to, you know, take the time and the energy to be in integrity with the sourcing, you know, be in that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I did initially order a yoni egg from Amazon, just like, I was like, oh, I'll just get the...
People do, yeah.
And I remember I got the egg and I didn't want to use it. I was like, like it just didn't feel, there was something that I just sensed just wasn't right. So then I like kept searching and I actually ended up never using that egg. And then I found your website and I was like, I received my egg and I was like, whoa, yes. Like even from the packaging to the intention behind it and the little like things you put in there, like little notes, and it was like, you deserve to feel hot as fuck. And I was like, holy shit, like this lady is super cool. So it's like, there's a completely different intention behind it. Plus then, of course, it's an organic, like you just know it's from a safe source. And that made like all the difference for me. So, okay, next question. Oh, I guess, or do you have any more to say about like building up that business? And then from being in Bali and then also like living in North America, and then like how did you, with your feminine energy, like how were you able to build that up?
Yeah, so I love this question. I have to be vulnerable and kind of, you know, go into, I just want to be like fully transparent. You know, the first, I would say 2.5 years of building the business out, I actually went into a pretty masculine space. I have like, you know, I come from a very much like workaholic family, And I'm an Aries, I'm super driven. And I just got to this point with the process of building it out where I just was like on a really full on grind. I was like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to like push and force and like build this thing out, you know, like, oh, I gotta network with the right people and I gotta build the website and I need to, you know, the sourcing was a whole mission. I mean, there was a lot of steps. And then last year around my birthday, right at the time when my business was having, it's been a slow, gradual, and at this particular month, it had done really well. And I hadn't quite built out the infrastructure to support all of the, like the customer service and, you know, all of the orders. Like we were working with the shipping, small shipping center. So luckily a lot of the bases were covered, but long story short, I was completely unprepared for like a big spike. And what it turned into was me being on my computer for, you know, over 8 hours a day to just like keep up and, you know, manage. And it came to a head when basically my lower back spasmed and it basically just gave out. I was in Bali and it was just it was a reality check. My body was like, hey sister, this is not the way you can, you know, show up. This isn't sustainable. This isn't the way you can run, you know, your business, let alone your life. So in that process, I had a really profound, really deep healing revolving around my inner masculine. It was actually related as well to my dad. I've done a lot of healing work, like with my mom and my dad, and more so work with my mom. I feel like I've done so much healing work with my feminine. And this in particular thing was like, hey, you got some stuff to look at. You know, the body's intelligence, like,
Yes.
So I was basically, I had to lay flat for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Literally. And it was, it was a full-on initiation into this transformation. And at that time, a really close friend of mine, she came over to take care of me. She said, do you remember when I offered to help you with a few things like about a year ago? And I was like, yeah. She said, I'm here. Like, what do you need help with? And that's when I started training and really bringing on extra help with my business because, you know, I think there's this idea that if we just push and force and like, you know, make it happen. I was in this interesting position where I had done the forcing, I had done the pushing, I had done this like very masculine process, and then the payoff was there, and it was, I couldn't even enjoy it. How can you even? So I'm really grateful. It was definitely like you know, it was a journey, but I'm grateful because what it ultimately showed me was I'm required to really operate my business and my life in like a way that's in balance with the masculine and feminine. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I have moments where it's like, you know what, not today. Like today is the day where I'm just gonna do yin yoga. I'm gonna like make some soup and read a book. Or, you know, today's the day that I'm going to really slow down and like ask myself, what really wants to come through. And I've been in this practice of really asking, you know, Yoni crystals, like the spirit of Yoni crystals, or like the being that is, you know, Yoni crystals, what wants to come through. Mm-hmm. And when I shift from my mental place of, I know what I need to do, this, that, this, force, go, to-do list, and I release that and I let this more feminine spaciousness come through, oftentimes things start flowing that I wouldn't even have had. It's like my brain can't even comprehend, you know. It really gives space for that. So yeah, that's
so fascinating. So that's what I love about this work too, and I'm very much connected to like, or drawn towards like powerhouse women like yourself, because we have been brought up to believe like the only way to be successful is to hammer yourself into the ground. At least that's what I was taught. To go at it until can't go at it anymore, and you go a little bit harder. And that's definitely just not, that's like not a healthy masculine. And yeah,
it's just the old paradigm way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that, breaking that paradigm as like an ambitious woman is a very difficult thing to do, because basically every video out there of like any successful like CEO or like Fortune 500 companies, we just work 7 days a week nonstop and we eat mustard sandwiches until it happened, right? And it's like, that's what we're sold on. And so, but that's the funny thing, because about the feminine energy, like female pleasure, feminine pleasure, it's slow. We boil, right? We're water. And so I've noticed too, that was kind of my big wake up call. I was like smashed out of the CrossFit world because this wasn't healthy for me anymore. I was literally destroying myself in something that I built up, like this very hyper masculine structure I'm good at. And then all of a sudden I was forced to now go into my body. What was there? What were the secrets, and what was like my body or spirit really trying to tell me? And as I was not a spiritual person at all. And that's what I've realized too about, I'm like kind of a side hustler. I have lots of little projects on the go, but it's like when I do things through a feminine, like through sensing, I guess would be the word, things do start to flow and open up. But when I try to push and like overdo it, it's like I will learn some kind of lesson. Like I'll lock my keys in my car, or like I'll have to spend money where I didn't really want to, or yeah. And it's just like, so now I'm really learning. It's like trusting that great mother energy to guide us along. And I feel like through my practice with the Yoni egg, I've just been able to tap into that in a way that I don't think is available to us currently. Like, right, this is like feminism or like not feminism, but like feminine energy for the modern sister. And it's so powerful, and it's so current, and we need to use it. That along with, like, then I feel like Yoni crystals is like a great way to like open up the door into like other healing that you're going to need to do. It's not a cure-all, right? But
absolutely,
it's definitely that first step. And why do you think that how do you balance that? How do you balance that with, there are going to be demands sometimes, and you're going to have to like really put out, I guess, get that output. So then do you always make sure that you find that balanced input in some way? Like you're very conscious of that, and you're like, no, I need to like do this for myself today.
Yeah, well, I love this question. I think that like myself and everyone in my world is in this question, it's an oscillation. It's like this balance. It's like, how do we really ebb and flow? And, I do this motion a lot. It's like, how do we really weave these two sides of ourselves? There's absolutely moments when like, okay, the shit's hit the fan. I need to like show up and like get into this and go mode. And, and then there's times when it's like, wow, I'm actually premenstrual, and I'm not even going to be useful if I try to force and push and do, So, for me, it really looks like slowing down and tuning in and listening, and noticing the, one thing that the egg practice has really helped me to tune into is it's brought me to this place where I'm more tuned into the subtle energies. So I notice if I'm getting irritable, or if I'm getting out of balance, or if like something's off, I'm noticing it like way before the point at which, oh, now I'm in like complete distress, or, this thing's, in freak out mode. I'm noticing how I can like tap in and really listen to myself before that happens and recalibrate. It's like, I think something else that's really true for the feminine way is it's being present. It's really coming into like the present moment and like being like, okay, obviously I have my ideal list of what I want to get done today. I've got like, it's Monday or whatever. And with that being said, how can I really slow down and like honor, like really slow down and listen and tune in? And, the egg, working with the Yoni egg is like, that's what it's cultivating. You know, it's really bringing us to this subtle place and this softness. And it's also bringing us into this place of like cultivating this like yummy, juicy, like feminine energy. It's like, you know, when we're really like activating and like we're turned on and we're like saying yes to like our bodies and our pleasure and like how we activate that, we can really channel that energy, you know? I mean, we can really bring that energy into the world in like ways that are, I mean, I say if, you know, if a woman's not making a baby, she's making something, you know, it's like something is being put into creation from that void, from that feminine void. So, yeah, I think it's definitely, you know, it's a spiral, it's a journey, and, you know, absolutely the crystals help with that.
Really, really do. Yeah. And it is such a journey. And like, I love that you talk about spirals, because I talk about spirals a lot too. And it's like, you come back to the same issues again, but then it's like through a different lens, and you have this ability to be like, okay, this is what happened this like last time, but now I'm going to like tweak it and really honor myself.
Maybe I'm up another rung. It's like the same thing, but it's a little, I've got more like of an awareness now. I'll show you. I pulled this card on Sunday, and it's my card for the week.
Oh, no way.
Round and round, yeah. It's like, and then it was gifted at the end of the session, and I'm like, okay, that is accurate.
Yeah,
know?
We're just spiraling up into like, our higher self, our highest being.
You are not even going to believe this. The other card I pulled, oh my God.
No way. Oh my God, Chelsey. What's going on?
You literally just said that. That's amazing. Those are the only two cards. Whoa, they're right here in front of me.
Oh, I love it, man. That's the power of the Yoniverse. So yeah, what is this Yoniverse that you talk about on your website?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're definitely we're in it
Yes,
right now.
We're in it.
I like to say it's pulsing, you know, like you know, there's this energy, there's this like yeah, it's almost like just when you feel like you're in this place of flow, and you know, you're turned on, you're connected, you're tapped in. Yeah, the Yoniverse is it actually originally started as kind of a joke, because you know, once I started this Yoni, everything came through. It was like, there's a Yoni shirt, there's like a Yoni doll, there's like a Yoni, like everything is Yonis, you know. It's like amazing, this movement's happening. And at one point I was like, I'm literally in the Yoniverse, like this is it's everywhere. Yeah, to take that to another level, I mean, it, you know, it really is. Yeah, I mean, you know, I just think about how I like tune into that place within myself, you know. It's this like stillness inside, and it's this infinite place, you know. It is like the cosmos. It's like you know, it's like the stars and the, you know, the universe, the multiverse, the all of it. So Yoniverse is just like a it's just a sweet, like, we're just in it.
Yeah, and it's so cool because they like ancient cultures would say that like a woman's womb is an imprint of the greater cosmos. And oh, I get chills when I say that, because it's so true. And I don't know, like, do you ask your Yoni like decisions to like make decisions for you, like give you guidance through life? Do you do that like on a daily basis?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there's it's funny. So I want to speak really quickly to the cosmos and the geometry, and then talk about how I ask her everything. But one piece of information that feels really valid to share is I work a lot with the Vesica Pisces, and this is the geometry that is also referred to as like the Venn diagram. If most people don't know what a Vesica Pisces is, you just look at the, yeah, so basically it's the two intersecting circles, and in that center place you get this really beautiful you know, geometry, and it's literally, it's like this portal, it's this place. And you know, they say that when life begins, we start as one cell, and then another cell is formed, and that's literally when that second cell is placed, that's the point at which creation is like, it's the point at which non-existence is coming into creation. So you know, we really are working with this you know, I call it high level magic. It's this really, you know, beautiful, infinite you know, you know, when we, I mean, I can speak for myself, when I go into my own like still point and I, you know, tune into that geometry, or I tune into like, okay, what is in that infinite space? That's like literally where all the magic is. You know, it's like when, and it's speaking to, you know, quantum physics, it's like from the infinite space of nothingness, like what actually comes into, you know, here we are in 3D right now, that point of singularity, it comes from the infinite void. It comes from the infinite space. So I just think it's really exciting. You know, we get to, you know, have this, like, we carry this portal as women, you know, and men too. I mean, I'm opening up this conversation to say, just as much as women can tap into their masculine, you know, a man can tap into his feminine. You know, the men have that opportunity to channel into that. Yeah, but this womb space, it's like, it's our power portal, you know. So I just wanted to speak to the Vesica Pisces for a second. Because that felt relevant. Yeah, and then what was the next question? I went on a tangent.
Oh, I actually totally forget. Oh, no. I was like so interested into asking your womb question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I knew it was important. I was like, I need to share about that. Yeah, so that's actually another practice that I feel is so beneficial to do with the egg. You know, you can really you can just slow down and you can go into this space of tuning in and asking your body, you know, what is in my truest and best? You know, what is really going to be serving me in this moment? And I have found that the body's intelligence, you know, especially the womb's intelligence, is infinitely more accurate and like valuable than like, you know, our logic and our brain. Sometimes our brain is just operating from such a limited vantage point, whereas like one of the examples I have is with kinesiology. They did a study back in the 70s where they had two blank envelopes, and one held like sweet and low and the other one had vitamin C. And of like hundreds of people that they tested, every person in unmarked envelopes naturally gravitated towards the vitamin C and naturally gravitated away from the sweet and low. And it's like the body's awareness of like, the brain doesn't have to know everything, but we're connected through this like unseen field of information and of, you know, of wisdom. So yeah, I love the practice of asking my womb, you know, especially when it relates to business and it relates to, you know, strategizing and like coming up with like, okay, what's my next move? How am I gonna respond to this opportunity, or how am I gonna respond to this challenge? You know, the womb space is this infinite place of like, of knowing. And obviously, like, you know, if you've not ever communicated with your womb at first, it's not going to be like, oh my God, here's all the answers, you know. Initially, if you tune in, there might be something there that's like, oh, we actually need to, you know, do some clearing work, or we need to do some listening to the womb. Right. But I found the more that I've been on this journey and I do this work, like, yeah, I just slow down and I listen to her.
And do you tap into that every day, like through like a meditation Yoni egg practice kind of thing?
Yeah, the Yoni egg practice is an incredible way to tune in, is to tap into that. Yeah, because in the practice, I mean, what's so beautiful about doing it with the egg is you're in the practice. You know, you've really created the space, you've created the time to really like go into the depths. And I'll also say too, I mean, you could do this while you're driving. You know, you could do this, you know, in the moment when you're, you know, walking through a space and you're, you know, deciding, okay, where am I going next, or, you know, whatever the situation is. It's almost for me like, it's like a feedback loop. You know, it's like this point of information that's just being relayed back and forth. And yeah, I feel it from my heart too. You know, I think those two centers communicating to each other and then guiding us is just really valuable. I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I started actually speaking to my like womb, did you hear, like, I hear sometimes like a voice, like a different voice than like my own head voice. Do you feel that, or is that just like, yeah?
Yeah.
Like she has her own language, her own voice, like it's completely different.
Like, no.
Yes. hello, my love. Like very like sensual, like
Like,
soft.
I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. She
Yeah.
might be French, I don't know, you know.
Well, hey, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, one thing I practice, or one thing that I share, it's in the booklet too, that comes with the crystals. It's this concept of a soul language. And it's this idea that like our soul is communicating to us in its own language. And the same can be said for the womb. You know, it's like the womb really has like, you know, how is she communicating? For some women, it might be like a very clear, like, you know, soft French lady voice, like who knows. For someone else, it might be just like a feeling. It might be like, oh, I'm feeling like a gravitational pull this way, or oh, I'm feeling it's like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. You know, really letting yourself uncode whatever that language is. I mean, it really is like learning a new language, you know, and learning a new language is, you know, it's not an easy thing, and it's always evolving and changing. So, you know, yeah, the practice of really slowing down and listening to the womb and giving her the time and space to speak. It's amazing. And yeah, I'm just like yes, 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 yes.
To all of it. And I guess one of my last questions is why should women be living with more pleasure?
Mm. Oh wow, I love this question. That's really great. I'm just imagining like women around the world actually living with more pleasure, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, why not? You know, I mean, the world is just, we are going through so much on the planet right now. I mean, I don't even need to go into it. I mean, you just turn on the news or you open Facebook and it's like, there's just so much happening. And I really feel, you know, my personal thought on this is that, you know, we're needed on the planet right now. Like, we're all, you know, we need to show up in like our greatness. And, you know, pleasure is just like such a access to letting, you know, that self come through, you know, to like really giving yourself permission to say, you know what, like I am, you know, is it I'm worthy of pleasure, or like I'm ready for pleasure, or you know what, I'm going to take the time to give myself pleasure, whatever it is, you know, giving yourself that and then giving that to the world. I mean, it's just like, it's where it's at.
And that,
like, everyone wants to feel better. It's so good.
totally. And yeah, you know, you can't give pleasure unless you know pleasure yourself. And I love that quote because it's like, and I love you also speak about this on your website, but it's like the truest unconditional love is the love that is for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as women, we're taught, you know, we have to always make sure everyone else is okay before we are okay. And I truly believe that's probably why the world is in the state that it is. You know, it's because we don't tap into our own greatest love, which is we think is going to be out there somewhere, going to be completed by another human, but it's really completed by ourselves. And I think that has been the biggest, and that, yeah, that's how I've like tapped into that, is through pleasure and understanding it's all up to me and it all ends with me. It all starts with me, and I can always begin again and again and again and again. And it's
yeah. One of my sisters said a couple days ago, and I loved this. She said, "Why is it the only place that we're told to first take care of ourselves is literally on an airplane with like, put your mask on yourself first and then the person next to you." It's like, if we could just take that concept of like really like, you know, filling our cup and like going into that place of like self-love and self-care to really like be in our fullness and be in our greatness. And then from there, what can we offer? And again, back to this, you know, card, it's a spiral. I mean, you know, I think there's days when like, oh my God, it just flows and I'm like in it. And then there's days when I'm like, actually, this is not flowing. And okay, that's, that's the truth. That's the feminine way, you know? So yeah, I just really appreciated that metaphor. And I thought that if, you know, if we all could really take that and like really give that to ourselves, I mean, wow, what world would we live in?
Yeah, truly embody that. And that, yeah, that's actually the other thing I wanted to say to you or ask you, because there's this concept that we should be like motivated and on it all the time, you know. Again, that's that unsustainable like masculine energy, that output. And I'm sure like you wake up some days and are you like, man, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do today. Everything's kind of confusing and everything's kind of a clusterfuck.
Yes.
And I think that idea of like, I wake up with that, you know, a couple of times, like I do wake up with that sometimes, and I'm like, okay, the more I can offer myself love and compassion through this like feeling, I'll
Yep.
get through to like another side or like a new understanding. Is that kind of how you approach it?
Absolutely. Well, and I think that, you know, ties back to this whole practice, like working with the egg and, you know, working with really these like self-love rituals. You know, it's literally, it's flipping the script. It's like changing the narrative of like, okay, I'm just going to be in this like default world where, you know, we're not allowed to experience pleasure. And it's like, fuck that. Like, no, this is our lives. Like, this is like how we show up. And so, yeah, I definitely think that the more that, you know, women say yes to their pleasure, they tune into that gauge. They tune into like, hey, how am I going to show up today? And again, that may be, okay, I need to lay in bed with a book and have tea literally all day. Like I'm premenstrual or it's my first day of my period. Bye, world.
Right. Yes. And giving yourself that permission. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's just so amazing because the more that we say yes to that, and the more that women show up and do that. I saw this video go viral the other day, and it said something like women in India are starting to get their first day of their period like paid off. Like companies are paying them for that day, and like they get it off work. And then how is she going to show up the rest of the month because she really got that day to like nourish herself and like be in her temple and like be in her own, you know, replenish and fill her cup and like things like that, like that are happening on the planet. I'm like, okay, we're getting there, you know?
Start to get it. Yeah, and it's so funny. So the past two periods I've had, I've actually rested. Like I didn't run, I didn't work out, I didn't do anything. And it's like I feel juicy as hell. And I was like, and I also don't have painful periods anymore. And it's like, wow. It took me 30 years to get here to like understand that. I was like,
Yeah.
what? I was always pushing through. And being like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. So I'm just going to ignore it, which of course was a whole other issue.
I'm going to take a Midol and I'm just going to like, you know, do what I need to. Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. It's taken me, you know, a long time to really, just say no and say like, okay, fuck that. What do I need? You know, what do I need?
And again, I guess that's it. It's the Yoni egg and the Yoni, like working with crystals really allows you to tap into your own voice. Like, what do I need? Regardless of what's going on in this crazy world or in my relationships or whatever. It's that your voice, which is the most powerful out of any of them. And then to actually act on it and follow that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me too, it puts me back in rhythm with nature. You know, it's like instead of using a product or like something that's like, you know, man-made, it's literally this gift from the earth. And, you know, I just know whenever I'm in nature or, you know, I'm with my crystal, it's like, oh yeah, this is actually recalibrating me back to like the ebb and flow. And nature has, you know, seasons. Nature has like, you know, times when it's like it's downpouring rain and now it's super sunny and now it's, you know, there's going to be a windy day. Oh, now there's just this like amazing, like field of flowers. Like nature is just so highly, you know, like I feel like when I go back to that place, that's when I activate like my highest wisdom.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I live right by this like really cool lagoon, and I'll just like share this because last night I was like, man, I just like I'm feeling a little bit, I don't know, like a little bit sad or something, and I just sat under this tree and was like with my crystal and just was like hanging there, and I was like, you know, just I need kind of a sign that I'm like I'm on the right path or whatever, and then this big leaf fell out and landed right on my head, fell out of the tree. And I was like looked up and it was this big leaf and I was like, wow, Thank you. And I was like, I felt so connected to nature. It was so beautiful.
You're like, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, right? Like, she was just like, you're okay. And it was like, man, yeah, it is really beautiful to just remember that we are living in this natural world, and there's curves to it, and there's cycles, and it's wild, and then it's soft. And I think the more that we can just go with that flow of the inevitable ups and downs, and love ourselves through it, and not beat ourselves up for it, because that doesn't even make sense. The more powerful we are, we're stepping into our authentic self.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, Chelsey, thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
Best place would probably be my website, the Instagram too, Yoni Crystals. Yeah.
All right. And do you have any like upcoming events on the horizon for yourself?
There are, yeah. There's an event happening in Colorado. Sydney's going to be leading a workshop. I don't have that off the top of my head, but all of it's going to be posted. And we're actually very soon launching Love Yourself Collective. So this is really sweet. It's basically a compilation of all of the sisters and all of the women, the partners we work with. And it's basically going to be a hub where their online courses, their in-person courses, their one-on-one sessions, anything and everything that's womb related. So that's hopefully going to be launching in less than a month, but yeah, it will all be posted on Instagram and on the website and Facebook, and so yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful. This was really, really incredible. This was so magic. Like, you were such an inspiration to me, and I'm just like heart beams of gratitude for you, like asking me to be here. Yeah, I'm just gonna blast you.
I feel it. And yeah, thank you so much. Like, honestly, you're a huge inspiration, and you're a pioneer, and you are bringing so much good shit into this world that's so needed right now. So
I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, take care, Chelsey, and have a lovely rest of your day.
You too. Bye, love.
Bye.